I'll write Part 1. The assassination in approximately 800 words with simple Korean names, using basic English in third-person style. Ambassador Lee stood at the viewport of the human diplomatic vessel as it approached the massive space station that served as the meeting point between the Terran Alliance and the Stellar Empire. The station hung in space like a gleaming metal flower, its petals spreading outward to form docking bays for ships from 100 different worlds. This was supposed to be a historic moment. After decades of careful negotiations, humanity had finally secured a formal meeting with the Empire's ruling council. As the chief diplomat for the Terran Alliance, Ambassador Lee had spent his entire career working toward this day. The Empire controlled nearly 2/3 of the known galaxy. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's. Their military might was unmatched, yet they had agreed to this meeting to discuss terms of peace and possibly alliance. "Are you ready, sir?" asked Kim, Lee's young assistant. Her face showed both excitement and worry. "As ready as I'll ever be," Lee replied, straightening his formal blue uniform. The simple design was chosen carefully, respectful but not flashy, confident but not threatening. The ship docked with a gentle bump. Lee took a deep breath. "Remember, no matter what happens in there, we represent all of humanity." The Imperial greeting party consisted of tall, blue-skinned beings in elaborate ceremonial armor. Their faces remained emotionless as they escorted the human delegation through long hallways decorated with artworks from 1,000 conquered worlds. The main chamber took Lee's breath away. A massive dome of what looked like glass revealed the galaxy spinning above them. Below stood representatives from dozens of species, all subjects of the Empire. At the center, on a raised platform, sat 3 Imperial elders. Their skin was pale, almost translucent, showing the network of veins beneath. Their eyes, 3 on each face, blinked in unison as Lee approached. "The human representative may approach," announced a translator device. Lee walked forward slowly, exactly 15 steps as protocol required. "We bring greetings from Earth and all human colonies," Lee began, his voice strong despite his nervousness. "We come seeking understanding between our peoples." The central elder raised a 6-fingered hand. "We have watched your kind for many years. Your expansion troubles us." "Our growth has been peaceful," Lee responded carefully. "We seek only to—" A flash of light interrupted him. At first, Lee thought it was some kind of ceremonial display. Then came the pain, hot and sharp through his chest. He looked down to see a smoking hole in his uniform. Around him, voices shouted in confusion. Guards rushed forward. The elders stood, their faces showing what might have been shock. Lee fell to his knees. Kim ran to him, catching him before he hit the floor. "Sir, Ambassador," she cried, pressing her hands against the wound. Lee could feel his strength fading. The ceiling above seemed to blur and shift. Through the chaos, he saw Imperial guards dragging away a struggling figure, someone who didn't look like the other Imperial citizens. "Tell Earth," Lee gasped, gripping Kim's arm. "Tell them we tried peace first." His last sight was of Kim's tearful face as darkness closed in. News of the assassination spread across human space faster than any ship could travel. On all 27 colony worlds, citizens gathered around screens showing the final moments of Ambassador Lee's life. On Earth, the Terran Alliance Council convened an emergency session. The chamber was silent as they watched the recording for the 3rd time. The shot, the ambassador falling, the chaos after. "The Empire claims it was a lone extremist," said General Park, his face grim. "They offer compensation and apologies." "Convenient," replied Admiral Han, the highest-ranking military officer in the room. She stood by a holographic display showing Imperial fleet movements. "While they speak of peace, their ships move toward our border colonies." President Kang, elected just 6 months earlier on a platform of peaceful expansion, looked suddenly old. Could this be a misunderstanding? Admiral Han activated another display. "Our intelligence suggests the assassin belongs to the Imperial Special Forces. This was no rogue action. This was sanctioned." The council members exchanged glances. 4. 30 years they had built their ships, their weapons, hoping never to use them against the Empire. They believe we are weak, Admiral Han continued. They believe we will respond with more diplomacy, more concessions. They believe we lack resolve. And what do you suggest? Asked President Kang. For 3 generations, we have prepared for this possibility while praying it would never come. We built our ships to counter theirs. We developed technologies they don't suspect we have. We are ready. President Kang looked at each council member's face, reading their resolve. Then he spoke the words that would change the course of human history. Then let us show the Empire what humanity does when pushed too far. Let us show them that killing our ambassador was their greatest mistake. The Terran Alliance hereby declares total war against the Stellar Empire. Admiral Han stood on the bridge of the TAS Dauntless, the flagship of humanity's hidden ghost fleet. Around her, crew members worked in focused silence, preparing for humanity's first major offensive against the Stellar Empire. The massive view screen showed hundreds of human warships moving into formation, vessels that had been built in secret, deep within asteroid fields and gas giant moons. All ships report ready, Admiral, said Captain Choi, her second in command. Han nodded. For 20 years she had helped oversee the development of this fleet. While human diplomats spoke of peace, military planners had quietly prepared for the possibility that diplomacy might fail. Now Ambassador Li was dead, and the time for preparation was over. The Empire believes we are weak. Han addressed the fleet commanders through the communication system. They believe we have a handful of outdated ships and limited military capacity. Today they learn how wrong they are. The plan was audacious. Instead of concentrating their forces against a single Imperial target, the human fleet would split into 12 battle groups and strike simultaneously across Imperial space. Their primary weapons, gravity disruptors and phase shift torpedoes, were technologies the Empire didn't know humans possessed. Begin phase shift in 30 seconds, ordered Han. The bridge crew counted down. When they reached 0, the Dauntless and its battle group seemed to flicker and vanish. The phase shift drive didn't make the ships truly invisible, but it shifted them partially out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to detect on Imperial sensors. 12 hours later, the human fleet appeared inside Imperial territory. The Dauntless and its battle group materialized near Nexus Station, the Empire's largest shipyard and military hub. Before Imperial defense systems could respond, human ships launched their first volley of weapons. The gravity disruptors hit first, creating localized distortions that crushed Imperial shield generators. Next came conventional weapons, missiles and energy beams that tore through suddenly vulnerable Imperial vessels. On the main Imperial command station, General Zal of the Imperial fleet stared in disbelief at the reports flooding in. 12 major facilities under simultaneous attack, Imperial ships being destroyed faster than they could launch, defense systems failing against weapons they'd never encountered before. How is this possible? He demanded. These are humans. Their technology should be centuries behind ours. His aide, trembling, handed him another report. Sir, they're using phase shift technology. Our sensors can't track their movements. Zal slammed his fist on the console. All available ships, defend the shipyards. We cannot lose our production facilities. But the Imperial response came too late. Human forces had achieved complete surprise. The carefully planned strikes targeted key infrastructure, power cores, command centers, and construction docks. Within 3 hours, Nexus Station's shipbuilding capability was crippled. Similar reports came in from across Imperial space. The humans had struck with surgical precision, destroying military targets while mostly avoiding civilian casualties. This wasn't random destruction, but a carefully orchestrated campaign. On the Imperial homeworld, Emperor Mal received the news with cold fury. He had not authorized the assassination of the human ambassador. That had been the work of military, hardliners who believed a preemptive strike against humanity was necessary. Now those same hardliners watched as their miscalculation brought disaster. I want answers, the Emperor said to his assembled council. How did primitive humans develop these weapons without our knowledge? How did they build this fleet in secret? No one had satisfactory answers. Imperial intelligence had catastrophically underestimated human capabilities. What appeared on the surface to be a species focused on commerce and colonization had secretly developed into a formidable military power. Back aboard the Dauntless, Admiral Han reviewed the initial battle reports. The first strike had been more successful than even she had hoped. 11 of the 12 targets were neutralized with only minimal human casualties. "Send the second phase order," she instructed Captain Choi. Across human space, reserve forces began to move, securing the territory they had just won. Han knew the Empire would soon recover from its shock. They still had vast resources and thousands of warships. The real war was just beginning. But humanity had achieved something crucial. They had shattered the myth of Imperial invincibility. My Narration. Her personal screen, Han looked at Ambassador Lee's photo. "We tried peace," she said quietly to the image. "Now they'll understand why that would have been the wiser choice." As the Dauntless prepared to phase shift to its next target, news of humanity's stunning victory spread across the galaxy. Species that had lived under Imperial rule for centuries watched in amazement. For the first time in living memory, someone had successfully struck back against the Empire. And no one, least of all the Empire itself, had seen it coming. The massive Imperial warship dominance moved through space like a predator. Its hull, black as night, stretched nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern. Around it flew thousands of smaller vessels, forming the largest battle fleet assembled in 2 centuries. Emperor Mal stood at the command center, his pale features illuminated by holographic displays showing human territories. "Our initial assessment of the humans was wrong," he admitted to his commanders. "They have proven more dangerous than anticipated. But make no mistake, this empire has stood for 10,000 years. We will not fall to newcomers." The Imperial counterattack began with overwhelming force. 300 warships descended on the human colony world of New Hope. The planet's meager defenses, a handful of orbital platforms and ground-based weapons, seemed pitifully inadequate against such might. "Commence orbital bombardment," ordered Imperial Commander Drek. "Show these humans the consequence of defiance." The first energy beams lanced down from Imperial ships, targeting military installations. Massive explosions bloomed across the planet's surface. Commander Drek smiled coldly. "Now target their major population centers," he ordered. "Let them learn fear." But when the second wave of bombardment struck the human cities, something unexpected happened. The energy beams hit powerful shields that hadn't been there moments before. Deep underground in bunkers built years earlier, the colonists of New Hope watched the Imperial attack through remote sensors. Shield network holding at 80%, reported a technician to Governor Min, the colony's leader. Min nodded grimly. For nearly a decade, human colonies had been preparing for this possibility. While building visible cities on the surface, they had simultaneously constructed vast underground shelters equipped with advanced defense systems. "What about our people still on the surface?" Min asked. "Evacuation was 97% complete before the Imperial fleet arrived," answered her security chief. "Most stragglers reached emergency shelters. Above them, the Imperial fleet continued its assault, wasting immense energy against shields designed specifically to counter Imperial weapons." Commander Drek's satisfaction turned to frustration as reports came in. "How can they maintain shields under this barrage? Their power sources should be overwhelmed." What the Imperial forces didn't know was that human engineers had developed efficient energy storage systems buried deep beneath the planet's crust. These could power the defensive shields for weeks even if cut off from outside help. While the Empire focused on direct assault, Admiral Han employed different tactics. Human ships avoided major confrontations, instead striking at Imperial supply lines and communication relays. Small fast attack craft would appear suddenly, destroy critical targets, and vanish before Imperial forces could respond. On the Imperial throne world, Emperor Mal received increasingly troubling reports. The humans weren't fighting as expected. They weren't following standard military doctrine. And worse, they seem to know far too much about Imperial defenses and weaknesses. "We have a security breach," concluded the Emperor's intelligence director. "The humans have information they shouldn't possess." The breach soon became apparent. On dozens of Imperial worlds, acts of sabotage disrupted military operations. Communication systems failed at critical moments. Power grids collapsed. Weapons malfunctioned. These weren't random acts. They were coordinated by a network that Ambassador Lee had secretly established during years of diplomatic missions. While officially negotiating trade agreements, Lee had also made contacts with species oppressed by Imperial rule, building an underground resistance that spanned the Empire. Now that network activated, throwing the Imperial war machine into chaos from within. On the mining world Zelon, enslaved workers destroyed critical mineral processing facilities. On the fortress moon, Gallus, security systems mysteriously deactivated, allowing rebel forces to capture an entire Imperial garrison. Most significantly, human intelligence operatives released sealed Imperial records detailing centuries of atrocities against conquered peoples. These records, broadcast across thousands of worlds, ignited uprisings throughout Imperial territory. What had begun as a war between humans and the Empire transformed into something larger, a galaxy-wide rebellion against Imperial rule. In her flagship, Admiral Han received reports of these developments with grim satisfaction. "Ambassador Lee's final gift to us," she remarked to Captain Choi. "He always said the Empire's greatest weakness was its treatment of subject peoples. The Imperial fleet, designed to fight conventional wars against external enemies, found itself suddenly fighting on multiple fronts against enemies both outside and within. Emperor Mal, facing the greatest crisis in Imperial history, gathered his most trusted advisors. We underestimated these humans once," he said darkly. "We will not do so again. Summon the Ancient Guard. Release the forbidden weapons. This rebellion ends now." Across Imperial space, vault doors that had remained sealed for centuries began to open, revealing technologies deemed too dangerous for regular use. The Empire was preparing to escalate the war to a new level of destruction. Captain Jin moved silently through the corridors of the captured Imperial intelligence base. His team had secured the facility less than an hour ago, taking the Imperial officers completely by surprise. This base, hidden on a small moon in a remote system, was supposed to be unknown to humans. Yet somehow, human intelligence had pinpointed its exact location. "Captain, you need to see this," called Sergeant Park from a nearby room. Jin found her standing before a large console, its screen showing data in the Imperial language. "Our translators are working on it, but some of these files weren't even encrypted," Park explained. "Almost like they wanted them to be found." Jin frowned. That made no sense. This facility contained high-level Imperial intelligence. Nothing here should be easy to access. Hours later, aboard the human command ship Aurora, Admiral Han reviewed the data recovered from the Imperial base. What she read made her blood run cold. "This can't be right," she murmured. "Run the translation again." But the second translation matched the first. According to the Imperial files, Ambassador Lee's assassination had not been ordered by Emperor Mal or the Imperial Central Government. Instead, a faction within the Empire, a secretive group called the Eternal Guard, had planned and carried out the killing. "Why would they do this?" asked Captain Choi, reading over her shoulder. "Why start a war with us?" The answer came in the next file. Long-range Imperial probes had detected something approaching from beyond the edge of the galaxy, something that had been encountered once before thousands of years ago during the early days of the Empire. The records were fragmentary, but they spoke of an invasion that had nearly destroyed Imperial civilization. The invaders had been driven back at terrible cost and warning beacons placed at the galaxy's edge. Now those beacons had gone silent, one by one. "The Eternal Guard believed we couldn't be trusted," Han said slowly. "They saw our rapid expansion, our growing technology, and decided we might ally with this enemy when it arrived. So they killed Ambassador Lee to ensure war between us," Choi concluded. "To weaken both sides before this greater threat arrives." Han called an emergency meeting of the Human War Council. Representatives from all human colonies gathered virtually to hear the discovery. "This changes everything," said Governor Minnie of New Hope Colony. "If the Emperor didn't order the assassination, we're fighting the wrong enemy." "Does it change anything?" countered General Park. "The Empire still attacked our colonies. They've still killed thousands of our people." "Because we struck first after the assassination," Han reminded him. "We didn't know then what we know now." The debate raged for hours. Some wanted to continue the war until the Empire surrendered completely. Others argued for reaching out to Emperor Mal with this new information. Meanwhile, Captain Jin led a small team on a dangerous mission into Imperial territory. Their target? An Eternal Guard facility where, according to the captured files, proof of the conspiracy was stored. The mission nearly ended in disaster when Imperial patrols discovered their ship. In a desperate move, Jin broadcast an open message on Imperial channels. "We have evidence of treason against Emperor Mal. We need to speak with Imperial authorities immediately." To his surprise, the Imperial ships did not open fire. Instead, a voice responded, "Identify yourselves and state your purpose." Jin took a deep breath. "I am Captain Jin of the Terran Alliance. We have discovered that Ambassador Li was killed by the Eternal Guard, not by Imperial command. We have proof the Guard is working against the Emperor's interests." A long silence followed. Then, "Prepare to be boarded." Jin and his team were taken to the Imperial cruiser Vigilance. There they met Commander Leun, a high-ranking Imperial officer who listened to their evidence with increasing alarm. "The Eternal Guard answers only to themselves," Leun confirmed. "They believe their duty is to protect the Empire, even from its own Emperor if necessary. Many of us have suspected their involvement in recent events." "Then help us end this war," Jin urged, "before the real enemy arrives." Leun studied the human captain thoughtfully. "Perhaps there is a way. But it will require trust between our peoples, something in short supply these days." As Jin negotiated with Commander Leun, Admiral Han received disturbing reports. Imperial forces had deployed ancient weapons of terrible power against rebellious worlds. At the same time, long-range sensors detected unusual energy signatures at the edge of the galaxy. Time was running out. Humanity and the Empire were destroying each other while a greater threat approached. Everything depended on whether Jin could convince the Imperial command of the truth, and whether humans and Imperials could set aside their hatred before it was too late. The Grand Hall of the Imperial Senate fell silent as Admiral Han entered, flanked by Captain Jin and Commander Leun of the Imperial Navy. The massive chamber, designed to impress and intimidate, housed representatives from every world in the Empire. At its center stood the Imperial throne, where Emperor Mal watched the human delegation approach. "This is unprecedented," whispered one senator to another. "Enemies allowed in the heart of Imperial power." Han walked steadily forward, conscious of thousands of eyes following her every move. The past week had been a whirlwind of secret negotiations after Captain Jin's discovery. Now everything depended on this moment. "Admiral Han of the Terran Alliance," announced the Imperial Herald, "here under flag of truce to address the Senate." Emperor Mal raised his hand. "Let her speak." Han stepped onto the speaker's platform. Her voice, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, reached every corner of the hall. "For months, our peoples have fought a war that has brought only destruction," she began. "Millions dead, worlds in ruins, and all because of a lie." Murmurs ran through the chamber, but she continued. "We believed Emperor Mal ordered the death of Ambassador Li. You believed humans sought to undermine Imperial power, but we were all manipulated." She nodded to Captain Jin, who activated a holographic display. Images appeared above the Senate floor. Internal Imperial communications, security footage, evidence gathered from the captured intelligence base. "The Eternal Guard orchestrated Ambassador Li's assassination," Han explained. "They acted without Imperial authority, against the Emperor's interests. Their goal was to ensure conflict between our peoples." The Senate erupted in angry shouts. The Eternal Guard had served as the Empire's secret protectors for thousands of years. Many senators had ties to the organization. Emperor Mal raised his hand again and silence fell. "These are serious accusations," he said. "What proof do you offer?" Commander Leun stepped forward. "Majesty, I have verified the human evidence. It confirms suspicions many of us have harbored. The Guard has exceeded its authority. They act now only for themselves." From the shadows at the edge of the chamber, a figure suddenly emerged. General Suk of the Eternal Guard, one of the Empire's most decorated officers. "This is human deception," he shouted. "They seek to divide us." "Then explain this?" Han challenged, nodding to Jin again. The hologram changed to show General Suk meeting with the assassin who killed Ambassador Lee. The Senate gasped collectively. "And explain why the Guard has kept this information secret," Han continued, as the hologram showed long-range sensor data of objects approaching from beyond the galaxy's edge. "You knew the ancient enemy was returning. Instead of uniting against this threat, you chose to weaken both our civilizations." General Suk lunged toward Han, drawing a concealed weapon. Before Imperial Guards could react, Captain Jin threw himself forward, tackling the general. They crashed to the floor as the weapon discharged, its energy beam scorching the ceiling. The Senate chamber descended into chaos. Imperial Guards rushed forward, surrounding Suk and the other Eternal Guard members present. Emperor Mal stood, his voice cutting through the tumult. "Enough. Detain General Suk and all Guard commanders. They will answer for this treason." Hours later, in a smaller chamber, Han sat across from Emperor Mal. The formal grandeur of the Senate was replaced by a more intimate setting. "For centuries, the Eternal Guard has operated with almost complete autonomy," Mal explained. "Their oath is to protect the Empire, even from itself if necessary. But this, starting a war when we face a greater threat, this is madness." "They feared an alliance between humans and the returning enemy," Han said. "They saw our rapid expansion and technological growth as a threat." Mal nodded slowly. "Perhaps we all misjudged each other." The following day, before the reassembled Senate, Emperor Mal and President Kang of the Terran Alliance signed the Lee Accords, named in honor of the slain ambassador. The treaty ended hostilities and established a framework for cooperation against the approaching threat. "Our differences seem small now," President Kang said during the ceremony. "Together, we stand a chance. Divided, we would surely fall." Over the next months, human and Imperial scientists worked to combine their technologies. Human stealth systems joined with Imperial weapons. Imperial shields enhanced human vessels. On the edge of the galaxy, a combined fleet took position. Human and Imperial ships flew together, former enemies now allies. Admiral Han stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the sensor display. In the darkness ahead, the first ships of an ancient enemy appeared. "All vessels combat positions," she ordered. Beside her stood Commander Leun, now her liaison to the Imperial forces. "Do you think we can win?" he asked quietly. Han watched as thousands of ships, human and Imperial alike, moved into formation. "I think we have a chance," she replied. "And that's more than either of us would have had alone." The galaxy's greatest war was about to begin. But for the first time in their history, humans and Imperials faced it together.